Welcome to the College Audition Podcast with your host, nationally renowned college audition coach, Tim Evanicki.
Hey everybody, Tim Evanicki here with the College Audition, back again for another episode of the College Audition Podcast. Today my special guest is Vince Cardinal, faculty and former chair of musical theater at the University of Michigan. Thank you so much for joining us today, Vince.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, as always, my listeners know that I try to get to know the person before the program, so I want to talk about you first, if that's okay. If you can give us a little summation or highlights of your life and career in the world of the performing arts up to your time at the University of Michigan.
Sure. Well, I'm really old, so this could take a whole half hour.
Perfect.
But I'll try to do it quickly. I was a kid actor like so many of our students are, and loved theater and everything about it. And that moved me into directing, which then made me really interested in playwriting. And so I ended up going to Yale School of Drama and getting a degree in playwriting at a really wonderful time in that school's history. It was when August Wilson was in residence, Arthur Miller was in residence, some amazing people. My mentor, Mylan Stitt, led that program. And what became really clear to me is in playwriting, you really have to know all aspects of what's going on. So it was a great way to use my acting, to use my directing, to then create theater. And I moved to New York from the Yale School of Drama and worked off-Broadway, worked in soap operas. And as I worked, I realized that there were big gaps of time when I wasn't getting to do theater, which is the thing I love the most. And my parents were educators. I've always been very interested in teaching. And so what looked clear to me was that people who teach theater get to do it every day. And so I transitioned and have been hopscotching between professional theater and educational theater ever since, which has meant my life, I get to do theater every day.
Wow. That's a beautiful statement. I love that. If you teach theater, you get to do it every day. That's wonderful. So now at the University of Michigan, how long have you been there, by the way?
I'm going to begin my 6th year in the fall.
Okay. And what are you responsible for teaching? When do the kids come in contact with you during their time there?
I primarily teach acting, but I see many of the students before they get to, my classes are starting in the junior year. I teach junior and senior year. But many of the students I see because I also direct. So I tend to be part of their lives from the beginning.
Oh, wow. That's great. So I'm going to put you on the spot like I do everyone. And we sent ahead sample questions, and the sample question is in your own words, describe your program. But I ask for the University of Michigan elevator speech, 60 seconds or less. Tell us about University of Michigan's musical theater program.
Sure. I think the thing about the University of Michigan's musical theater program that distinguishes it from other programs is that we have a really intellectually curious student body who come into the program not just with a desire to be on stage, but to grow and explore as citizens of the world. And so through our program, it's highly individualized. You can get a minor in music composition for musical theater, or you could go off and get a minor in international business, or however you want to do it. But we really structure a program for each student's path. And strangely, what we have found in doing that is that path leads dynamically to a professional career. And students tend to be really well-rounded members either of a Broadway company or a national tour or a TV show or film. And I think it's because of the breadth of their education. So I think it allows students to have their own free will in how they get their education. And in the end, we still get the outcomes that are super exciting in terms of the profession.
I think you might be the first student or the first person to respond and say that the students are the reason the program is so successful. That says something, I think. That's a really great answer to that question. So when I ask people about my new clients, ask them what they're looking for as far as their list. University of Michigan is almost always on every single student's list. You guys obviously have the reputation for being one of, if not the top musical theater program in the country. Being an insider, why do you think that is?
Well, I think it goes back to the creation of the program by Brent Wagner 35 plus years ago, where he really saw placing a musical theater program in a world-class university was a great match for certain students who wanted a breadth of education. The curriculum that the faculty has developed in the meantime is really on the pulse of what's going on professionally. So while there's consistency in the program, the curriculum really adapts and changes to what's happening internationally, what the students will need to do, and that consistency of curriculum and teachers plus innovation, I think has created an alumni network that then has complemented what happens in the school. So students don't just come in and have their 4 years and then that's over. They're very much part of a team that then helps them throughout their career at many, many levels. I mean, we are as proud of our realtors and our yoga instructors as we are our Broadway stars. And I think that is super important in terms of when you get out there, there are people at many angles in life who are there to support you. So it's an amazing alumni network, solid curriculum, and a consistency of output that the profession sees. So they trust, they'll gamble on somebody coming out of Michigan, even though they may be a little green to the profession, because they know what the background is.
Yeah. So you mentioned alumni, so let's chat about that for a second. Walk me through, the list is very long, I know that. So walk me through some alumni that are making headlines these days.
Well, the one who's just in my mind because he just came out with a cover of a Miley Cyrus song that's blowing up is Joe Serafini, who is Seb in High School Musical, the series, which is super fun right now. We have Mason Reeves is in the national tour of Frozen, playing the character whose name I always forget, but he's one of the leads in that. And Keki is going to go back to Broadway and Tina, the musical, as Tina. Ben Allers will be coming up right shortly in The Gilded Age, the TV series. Back to the national tour of Dear Evan Hansen will be Noah Kaiserman as Connor. And I could go on and on. What's so exciting is so many of them are working, and they're working back and forth between television, film, and stage. And so for many of them, as soon as the restrictions were lifted in SAG-AFTRA world, people were back. Aaliyah, for example, is in Sex Lives of College Girls, which will be coming out on HBO Max. So a lot of the things that have been happening in film television, they've had a head start on. And I think of Simon Longnight, who is Lafayette, Jefferson, and Hamilton in LA when it reopens in not too long. So they're doing great. And we're so proud of them all. If you want to know who's doing what and when, always just check our UMich Musical Theater Instagram page, and it's sort of the up-to-date news of what's going on.
You have some pretty prestigious faculty members there as well with incredible resumes and things. Share some of those with us.
Well, we're really, really lucky in that the faculty has firsthand experience, whether it's faculty that have been with us for a long time, like Mark Madama, Linda...
The legend.
The legend, Mark Madama. Linda Goodrich, who, was a Fosse dancer, did cabaret, and then transitioned herself into more choreography. Brent Wagner, who I mentioned, who founded the program and has been responsible for so many of the folks you know, and then our newer faculty, Chelsea was one of our Wicked alumni. She played Elphaba in Wicked, and then we have like wonderful people really recently. Chelsea Packard. I'm using first names like everybody knows
Chelsea
what I'm
Packard.
talking about. Lynn Schenkel, who is a wonderful composer, and she is now on faculty heading our musical theater composition program for musical theater. And I could go on and on. The guest list is also astounding, and that's one of the things I'm really proud of, is that even though you may look at our list of permanent faculty, the people who come in, like Telly Leong, just finished directing Godspell, so he was with us for almost 7 weeks. And you know, these folks with those kinds of residencies have major impact on us.
Yeah, of course. So you were giving a lot of credit to the success of the school, to the curriculum. So can you sort of talk us through sort of freshman through senior year? What are they tackling year by year as a student who had their dreams come true and they're going to University of Michigan?
Yes, I can. So first year is a real back to basics year, like it is in many curriculums. They're doing ballet, musical theater, dance, but they're also doing their music theory, their keyboard. We have a really comprehensive introduction to musical theater that covers everything from, what theaters make up Broadway, to what are the unions, to like just what is this business that you're going to be swimming in. And so those are those basic components. Production credit is necessary in there too. They do some crew work. They do really great musicianship class. And so, and an acting class, again, back to basics. So it's a very strenuous back to basics year. And usually there's a little pushback at the beginning of, wow, I know a lot of this. And then very quickly people are realizing how they knew it, but it wasn't in their bodies. They didn't own it. And so they really get that freshman year. Sophomore year is where they start integrating their acting with their singing, where they start working toward character, where they start in their performance class specifically, they start understanding styles and techniques and how to approach. Their theory continues, if necessary. Their dance continues, and everything is leveled, so they're moving on. And our hope is by the end of your sophomore year, you are competitive in your acting, in your singing and musicianship, and your acting. At the end of freshman year, there is a thing where they do everything for the faculty, and then we call those sophomore evaluations, and then they have the opportunity to sit down with each faculty member, talk about what we saw in those evaluations and how they're going to use the next 2 years. And that's a really important meeting. That's where you have like Benj Pasek and Justin Paul say, we would like to use the next 2 years to really look at composition and how shows are put together, and keep working on our other areas, but let us dive headfirst into this new area we discovered in the first 2 years. Or some students will say, I am good enough as a dancer, but I'm not great. I'm not competitive at the level I want to be. And so I would like to use the next 2 years to really double down on my dance, or my singing, or my acting. Or I've discovered art history and I want to get an art history minor. Or I know I want to go abroad for a semester, and so I'm going to go to London, or I'm going to do French immersion in Senegal, or semester at sea, or whatever it is that a student who is now at the end of their sophomore year has realized about their path that is different than it was when they came in as a freshman. And so then we designed that part of the journey for the next 2 years so that they have the education that they think best serves them, with some real clear insight from faculty about where they are professionally. We do not cut anybody. It's not a cut program. We don't believe in that. We really believe that if you are talented enough to be getting in, we need to be talented enough to teach you.
And how do their 4 years sort of wrap up with a showcase, or what does the University of Michigan do to sort of say, all right, here they are, world, we've had them for 4 years, now they're yours?
Well, we do a couple things. We do have a program that is a professional visitor program that starts freshman year, where casting directors, agents, artistic directors, various people who you might identify as gatekeepers, managers, are coming in regularly every month at least, meeting with the seniors, but also meeting with the whole department as a whole, giving master classes. And so those kinds of meetings start developing relationships quite early on with students, so that when we do our showcase, which we do an industry showcase, that showcase is really for a friendly room of people who are already invested in those young professionals, rather than that being the first time anybody's meeting anyone. Things have really changed in my lifetime in this business, because showcase used to be the only faucet that was open for the profession to meet the students. And now with the internet, our profession knows about our students well in advance. And so moderating that in a way that develops relationships, that isn't about trying to crack the nut of getting in to get those students, but allowing those relationships to happen and being part of that communication is really important. In your senior year, you start working on Showcase Rep your first semester. We do hire some coaches on Rep to help give, because we love you, we've been in the classroom with you, we bring in some outsiders who then are looking at you freshly and saying, oh, well, this is what I see. Because of course, we see the total person, we know how the journey has been, but the outsider is saying, okay, objectively, this is what I'm looking at. And we help start developing Rep over the year. That will be what we select for Showcase. And then we do a senior showcase at the end of the year, and it'll be fascinating to see how these things change, since so many showcases had to be recorded this year. And will that be, I mean, we've really benefited from it, because probably 10 times more people have seen our showcase than have ever seen the showcase in the past because of its availability. So is that going to become a standard? And will we have to do both? Will the live showcase be recorded? How this develops is going to be really fascinating as we move forward.
Looking forward to seeing that as well. And it's interesting, I'm talking to 2 or 3 schools a week recording these podcasts, and hearing every school's take on them. Some are going, just have already made the decision, we're virtual from now on, it was such a great success, that's what they want to see. Others are saying it's going to be some hybrid. Others are like, I have no idea, we're just going to go by what everyone else is doing. So it's interesting to hear that. But you guys really do have, the reputation and the connections that you're putting students in front of those professionals all 4 years. I have, next year I'll have 4 students at Michigan that were my previous students. And this year, one of mine, a freshman, was able to participate in the ABC workshop because of University of Michigan. And that is a really incredible thing. And actually, I'll let you explain a little bit more about what that is, but it was an incredible opportunity for him.
Which student are you speaking of?
Diego.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, and I'll say this broadly, that because of the internet, frankly, our students have been able to participate in a whole lot of opportunities, like the ABC workshop, that get them out there and see the world more broadly and have interactions with people who speak different technical languages about theater and about music. And then they come back to us, and they not only bring that knowledge to their peers, but we also can help talk about what that was and place it in their journey. And so it's, instead of, as when I started this, where students were really cloistered and protected from outside influence, at this point students really get a whole lot of opportunities, like those workshops, assisting directors, sitting in on things. And I think that has really been a wonderful way not only to enrich the student, but to enrich the department as we roll forward. But one of the things Michigan students learn really fast once they are admitted is people are looking at them. And the social media, the invitations to audition, all of those things have become things to manage instead of just nice compliments. And they are nice compliments.
Absolutely. I as a college audition coach, it's one of the things that kind of shocked me, and maybe just as being, a guy in his 40 years old, not understanding social media, but it's when my students are accepted to the University of Michigan, suddenly their followers on social media, on Instagram, go through the roof. And I actually get clients because they're following my students, my former students who've gotten into University of Michigan on social media. And I just think that's wild that these kids are almost like celebrity status from the moment they're accepted. And that says a lot about your program. I got to say that. And it's something I didn't even think about.
And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it just is. And there are downsides and there are upsides. I think it's a lot of responsibility at 17 and 18 to have that many people looking at you. And
I agree.
I would prefer they had a longer period to grow up and make mistakes and be bad, because I think part of growth is failure. And I think when I say be bad, I don't mean like morally bad. I mean like artistically questionable. Take chances, do things that are less scrutinized. But I also think because they've grown up in a social media world, they perceive it differently than I do. And so, but I do like, our classes do not end up on social media. When the door closes, that's private time to take a risk and to do the things that you need to do to see where your boundaries are in terms of how high can I sing? If I dance like this, will I fall on my butt? And yes, you should, because you should take the risk. But it doesn't need to be public. And so we're pretty careful about what we allow on social media, where we allow the cameras to be. And like all things on social media, everything is curated. So I hope students looking at us are realizing for every person on social media from University of Michigan who's winning an award or singing their face off, that's the take where it worked. And there was a lot of journey on the way there. So don't be afraid of your own failure, and don't be afraid to be on a journey of growth, because you're just seeing outcomes on social media. You're not seeing the trip, and the trip is more important.
That was quite a soundbite. I might steal that and quote you, because that was wonderful. So you took us through those 4 years, and you mentioned a couple things that I want to go back and touch on. So you said that first year is a getting back to basics thing, and that's going to tie into my question about performance opportunities at University of Michigan, because I don't believe that freshmen are able to audition and perform first year, correct?
Just the first semester.
First semester.
Yeah. First semester, they are not permitted to audition, and we really discourage outside performance. And, at the end of the day, you listen to your professors or you don't. I mean, we're not going to cast you, but if you end up in a movie, you're going to do your own thing.
Right. No, please go ahead.
Oh, and I look at that as sort of like you have been the superstar of your high school. You're like the Performance One racing car. We're going to bring you in and tear apart the engine to see how everything's working, clean some things up, fix things that are worn. And you don't want to throw that engine together quickly to perform again. So we give you a semester to sort of relax and really kind of look at the components of your technique. Are you healthy? Are you doing it in a way that is sustainable for the long term? And then in your second semester, you can start auditioning again. And there are so many performance opportunities, because in addition to the departmental opportunities, which there are two key ones, that sounds very strange, two opportunities that are university production, then a lot of concerts, but also there's a lot of student-driven opportunities. So there's Musket, which is a big musical. There's Blank Space, which are new pieces. There's Basement Arts, which is every combination of a musical, a play, a new play, all kinds of opportunities. That's where Star Kids came out of, those who follow Star Kids on YouTube. It's original work, it's traditional work, it's kind of amazing. And then we have Rude Mechanicals, and I could go on and on. A plethora of opportunities to perform. I think that's great, because I just think nothing replaces stage time for a student and exploration in front of an audience to figure out what you can do and how it works and what kind of feedback you can get. So I'm a big believer in working and working and working. Get on stage in front of people. So freshman year, you have half a year where you're just sitting back, and then you jump in head first and off you go.
So aside from all of those additional productions, what is the actual season? How many shows are in the actual season at University of Michigan?
Well, it depends how you define season, because I think of everything as part of the season. I don't think there is. Is the four and then the rest. I think it's sort of such a rich cornucopia. We do, as a department, 4 what we call university productions. So there's usually one closer to the beginning of the semester and one closer to the end of the semester. And then beyond that are all those other things. So those are the sort of either guest-directed or faculty-directed shows. There are 4 of them.
And are all 4 of those shows musicals?
Typically, and again, we're very sort of like, we really adapt to the students who are there. So typically 3 are musicals and 1 is a straight show.
Great. Something else that you chatted about and mentioned in passing were the minors that are available. And the larger universities, that's one of the major perks of even in the BFA programs, you're able to minor. Is that a very common thing for your students then to take a minor?
It is a very common thing for them to take a minor. And mostly, because they're intellectually curious, they're already sort of taking the classes just out of curiosity, and then suddenly they have a minor. I get a lot of people who say, I had no idea I had a French history minor. I was just taking classes that I loved, and it added up. So it is pretty common to have a minor. Generally, we have a couple students going through the program who do a double major. That usually takes some extra time. But it's a exciting place with all of the opportunities from like Mandarin to 3 or 4 styles of business minors you can get. It's pretty great.
So when students ask me about the universities and they say, is it possible to minor or double major? I always say, well, possible and probable are 2 different things. It's possible to do those things, but graduating within the 4 years time frame may not be probable if you're going to double major or add on more than 1 minor or a minor that takes a lot of time. So how rigorous actually is the BFA program, and how much time does it leave to sort of follow your own path outside?
Well, there are enough credits to get a minor without sort of breaking anybody's mold of how you get through. So that is kind of built into our system, that if you're there for 4 years and you take all the classes we recommend, a minor's pretty likely. You know, there are more rigorous and less rigorous minors. So that part of it totally can do. A double major, I think, is really tough, and I sometimes question it because I think sometimes if you're going to take a 5th year, you might as well go ahead and get that master's degree and then be set up for further academic studies. So I'm not always a cheerleader on a double major, but I also don't discourage anybody. It just does take time. So I think I answered that question.
You did. You did. I never discourage them either, obviously, when they come to me and ask about double majors, but I say, you know, all the power to you, but I'm still going to think you're crazy because that's a lot to decide going in that you're going to do that. So before you even know what the program's like.
I'll say this about intensity because it's the most common thing I watch students go through. High school intensity, which our students are really used to, where they're getting up at 5:30 to do show choir by 7, and then they get another rehearsal in, and then they do a full day of school, and then they go take dance lessons, and then they go do their rehearsal for a show. They're used to intense. The difference is in college, you're not at one building all day. And you might have a 20-minute break here and an hour there. And so your life becomes a little more your own. And that's sort of like I showed up at school when it was dark and I left at dark. Intensity is not what college is like. Now, in college, you might have time to get a 20-minute nap after your dance class. And then you might be studying during lunch. So, you know, things get compressed, but you're more in control of it. So I think most students who go through the rigors that our theater kids go through get to college and they're like, it's not that bad. It's a lot, but it's not like high school in terms of hours spent.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true. You also mentioned studying abroad and semester at sea. Is there anything that's actually offered through the university, or is that something that students apply for and then do on their own?
We have a really good Office of International Studies that will help guide you, but it's not like Michigan has a program that's specific in London or Italy or something like that. Now, there are Michigan programs that are sort of 2 weeks to study art history in Paris or 2 weeks in Berlin or something like that. But the sort of longer intensity programs end up being facilitated through the university, but not hosted by the university.
So let's chat a little bit about student life. Assuming at some point students want to leave the campus during their 4 years, tell us a little bit about Ann Arbor and what there is to do around there. Most of it is the university, but talk to us a little bit about student life.
Yeah, I think that's also one of the exciting things about going to Ann Arbor. Sort of, if you have a movie version of what going to a university is like, it's kind of set in Ann Arbor. It's a Big Ten school. Everybody does participate in the football games. I mean, we work our rehearsal schedule around football. It's a cute and great little downtown. If you're a foodie, it's foodie paradise. But the thing that's great is you can go downtown and you can go to a club or you can go to a restaurant or a bookstore, but you are a 4-minute bus ride from your dorm or your apartment. And so it's all very close. It's a really small, cute little town. And the campus is beautiful. So I think it's a great place to be. I think students love it. And then there are things like the Arboretum, which is like the most beautiful park in the world. So kids can go there and play Frisbee and have picnics. It's our Central Park. And then we have a great University Music Society where most major orchestras and artists come through Ann Arbor. So again, you can study till 15 minutes before curtain and then go hear David Byrne. You know, it's an amazingly rich cultural town. So I'm a big fan of Ann Arbor, and I think students fall in love with it. And the testament to that is how many alumni come back to it. And great stuff like when 3 of our alumni were Mean Girls in Mean Girls, and on Broadway, and they came back as a group and then threw a party in the house that they shared when they were in college, had a Mean Girls party for our students. And so like that kind of, like, I love where I was studying so much that I want to go back to the house that I was in, is not something I've experienced at a lot of schools. But
No.
Pasek and Paul did a similar thing when they were back in town. So people tend to love it. Gavin Creel's class came back as a class, talked to our students, but also just like had dinner at their favorite place and saw one of the shows and hung out in Ann Arbor. It's that kind of place.
That sounds amazing. I can't wait to. I'm going to be visiting in September. I can't wait to see. To get my tours. Let's switch gears now and talk about auditioning for the University of Michigan's musical theater program. I can only imagine what kind of numbers you get for applicants every year. So I ask all the schools, how many pre-screen applications do you receive every year?
Yeah, I don't talk a lot about numbers because I just think it's discouraging. What I think a student learns more about is, I think it's helpful to know that a lot of people apply to Michigan. But we also take people, and it might as well be you. So if you believe this is a good match for you, and that's really the question, Michigan isn't for everybody. So look at schools closely enough to say, is that a place that I'm going to thrive in? Is that where I'll find my people and have my best education, as opposed to what looks best on social media? Look for you. And if it's a match, go ahead and apply. That's more helpful than looking at the numbers. The numbers are terrible. We take a little over 1% of our applications.
Yeah.
So
That's
as a numbers game, you wouldn't buy a lottery ticket. On the other hand, you've worked on your talent, you have worked on technique, you know in your heart if you love it, and you've studied the University of Michigan. If it feels like a match, go ahead and apply. And I know that it's expensive to apply to schools, but I would also say never be shy about applying for an application scholarship, whether it's from one of the independent organizations, or contact admissions and say, hey, I really want to apply, but I can't afford that. Do you have any internal scholarships? Always ask. Like, those obstacles will stop some people. Don't let them stop you until if it has to, it has to. But don't make that the determining factor of your interest. There are great programs, as you know, Tim, all over the country. And I would say, don't let the starry programs be the only thing in your eyes. Really look at programs.
And I wish that I've said this time and time again, I wish there was a way for students to research the programs without knowing the name of the school while they're reaching them, to really see what a good fit was. Because I mean, you took all the words right out of my mouth with everything you just said. One, somebody has to get in. You need an incoming freshman class. If I could get into Juilliard, you can get into University of Michigan. I mean, talk to me about Juilliard numbers. They're a little bit, those are a little tight too. But then again, I also made the mistake of going to a school that wasn't a good fit for me just because it was a big name. I went there. I went to a classical voice program. That was something I did very well, but wasn't really where my passion was. And it worked for Audra McDonald, but it didn't work so much for me. I should never have gone there. And I made the mistake of just going because I got in, and I used myself as a teaching tool, I guess, as a teaching moment for the students. I would have much rather gone to a smaller, no-named musical theater program that was a good fit for me than going to the opera program at Juilliard. So I give that speech so many times about you guys, about Carnegie Mellon, about all those big names, Baldwin Wallace out there. We just find the program fit, find the curriculum fit. Absolutely.
I agree, 100%. And I have such admiration for my colleagues in programs all over the country who are doing miraculous work and really just pay attention to the people and get rid of the names.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully, you're all listening to more episodes of this podcast too and learning about those programs, so you can get excited about them as well. So, for the student who has researched University of Michigan, knows it is the perfect fit for them and can't imagine themselves any other place, how do they get noticed? What do you look for when you're watching those pre-screens or the live auditions?
Well, one thing I can tell you about us is you're going to get noticed. We really pay attention. And I think that's hard for a student who is recording in their bedroom to know that I'm sitting in my living room actually watching everything and going back and watching it again. So you're going to be noticed. While I'm noticing you, what I'm really looking for are things like, did you take it seriously enough to prepare? Are you communicating something about you as a human being, or am I watching a voice lesson? Like, I'm assuming if you get to the point where you're auditioning, 90% of the people can sing. So then it becomes, well, how do you communicate? How do you communicate about what you're singing? I'm not, a wrong note here, a rhythmic slip up. Those are not things that I'm thinking, oh, forget it, because those are human things. But how do you communicate your humanity through your audition? Are you having fun? Sometimes, I look in people's eyes while I'm looking at the pre-screen and I think, this is torture for them, and I feel bad to be part of it. Let's not hurt the children in the process. I see everything. I see people dancing in grandma's living room and knocking the Hummel shelf down and breaking the Hummels. I see people singing in barns, and I see people in, studios that are beautiful, wonderful, $25 million studios. I see it all, and really what I'm looking for is a person who has talent and a passion to communicate. And in their portfolio, I look for, has anybody said this person is kind? Has anybody said that this person is a leader by example? Is this person intellectually curious? Do people talk about bringing joy to the process? So those are components of what I'm looking for when I look at a pre-screen. And I have to tell you that there are way more people who fit those qualities than we have room for. And that's really important also, I think, for students to know. That at the end of the day, when we're putting together a class, I'm thinking in my head, oh my gosh, there are 40 other people out there who could be in this group, and they're going to feel like they didn't get into the school they wanted to. And that's, I feel like, don't take that hurt. Just think it's redirection. It's not rejection.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you could give words of advice to the incoming, it'll be my class of 2022 coming in, for their upcoming college audition process, which is almost like it's a whole new world now after we've taken these 2 years of sort of resetting. What is your advice to them?
I can think of a couple things immediately. First of all, remember, you are auditioning the programs just as much as they are auditioning you. And your audition experience is a microcosm of what the larger experience is probably like at that university, good or bad. And so if it's a bad day at that university, there's a huge snowstorm and things are closed and all of that, how do they handle it? How does that university handle problems? And how do you feel as a person in the midst of a problem? at the hands of that university. Or if it's an amazing day and you meet people you love and all of that, make note of it. But your gut is going to tell you. So I always say, look at all of these interactions as typical of that place. And, we all match with certain people. And some university might rub you the wrong way and another the right way. And it's nobody's fault. It's just good information for you to know about moving forward. I would say the second thing is to let yourself enjoy this. Like, you get to perform, you get to send stuff in, you get to do a little traveling maybe, but allow it to be joyful. It might as well be. What I really see when students are unhappy with the process and they can't get themselves to do this pre-screen, those that call, I generally say, when I'm procrastinating, it's usually because I have a bad attitude about something. I'm mad about it. So what about the pre-screen is making you mad? Let's talk about it. Is it your nerves for doing it? Is you don't like to be judged? You don't like your material? Let's talk through what the obstacle is and then get to the joy. Because at the end of the day, that's what we get to do. We get to perform. We get to do theater. And so make your audition part of the joy of the experience instead of this thing where your life is going to be ruined and you're not going to get in and it's going to be ugly. It will not. Whatever happens will be part of your journey. Your journey is perfect. Just learn how to embrace it. And when you get to those really, truly rough moments in life, which believe me are not auditioning for musical theater, then you can bring more of your angst to your life and say, oh yeah, this is the really hard part. But what we get to do, and it's joy. Let it be joy.
Well said, Mr. Cardinal. Thank you so much. So by the time this podcast airs, they will have announced your successor, and you are stepping down as chair. Does that mean that you are going to be joining Mark Madama on the road and doing workshops all over the country every single weekend? Will we get to see you in some workshops?
I would never compete with Mark Madama. He is the king of the workshop. And that will be great. But I like doing this kind of thing where I can say, hey, from the inside, this is what it looks like, and you're going to be okay. And that's what I'm better at than the workshops. But I would say if you have a chance to take a workshop with a Mark Madama or Brent Wagner, those are some pretty great workshops.
They are. We have Mark and we have Catherine Widener, or Catherine with us all the time. I just said the Walker. Sorry, Catherine Widener and Ithaca. I didn't mean to say you, but Catherine Walker. The kids love them, so we always have them back. And I am looking forward to our on-campus workshop at University of Michigan this fall. And looking to see the campus and introduce my students to the University of Michigan. So I hope we get to see you there as well when we're there.
Absolutely.
But I can't thank you enough for joining us today. And
thanks for
hope
having me.
To chat with you again soon.
All right.
Absolutely.
Take care, Tim.
You have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. For more information on the exciting training, workshops, and masterclasses offered by The College Audition, please visit us online at www.thecollegeaudition.com or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok.